You are tuned in to the Weekend Review, presented by the Prosper Group, where the right turns to win online.
Join us each week as we take a look at what is happening in digital advocacy and politics with a right of center focus.
Welcome to the Weekend Review podcast. I'm Caroline Alexander.
I'm Dan Huber, and we're your hosts. Thank you for listening to the pod. This week and every week, we talk digital advocacy and politics with a right of center focus. We have a blockbuster podcast for you today, so Caroline, let's get started.
Yes, we do. So later in the show, we have RSLC's digital director. She's talking digital for state level Republicans. But before we get to that, Dan, what have we been seeing in the online conversation relating to advocacy and politics?
The AM Rundown, powered by social listening from the Prosper Group, goes out weekday mornings and helps political and campaign professionals stay on top of the conversation online. Here's what's new and what we're seeing in the conversation. Falling and leveling off this week. So the Supreme Court, we've been following this for a couple weeks. It's down 51% this week. Not a whole lot new going on there driving the conversation. We've been talking a little bit about European travel, which has leveled off after the news that the European Union would start issuing visas to non-member states for people who've had the vaccination. But a little injection into the conversation this past week after the hijacking of an airplane. So we saw 16% growth week over week, which is about 23.1 thousand tweets. Mentioned last week that we're paying attention to gas prices. You know, we continue to see some initial volatility there, and we anticipate a rise in prices. So we're continuing to watch that. While it's volatile, it really hasn't shot up yet, but if the expectations that prices will go high continue to be the case, we expect that to grow over time. New this week that we're watching, the term Wuhan. New intelligence came out this week that the Wuhan lab researchers got sick in November of 2019, which really is kind of renewing some of the questions around COVID-19's origin. So there's been a lot of conversation about that. It's a pretty precipitous surge. Last week, the growth from last week was about 171%, which is roughly 565,000 tweets. So that's a pretty sizable amount of conversation that's going on there and pretty significant growth. We're also watching Israel. So we are seeing that conversation drop off a little bit after a couple pretty tumultuous weeks in the Middle East, particularly with a focus on the Gaza Strip. But obviously, you know, there's been a lot of conversation, some pretty concerning, if not disturbing, anti-Semitic conversation going on out there. So that's definitely something to be noting in what's going on online. And then I would say this week, Rand Paul is kind of earning the Your Ears Must Be Burning award. He got a big bump in online conversation this week between a few different things. So talking about COVID vaccines, he's come out and said because he's had COVID, he's not going to get the vaccine. Some conversation around threats to his family, and kind of a big win for him, the passage of an amendment banning Chinese research that relates to some of the concerns about the coronavirus and the lab there in Wuhan. So that's the conversation update. The AM Rundown is powered by social listening from the Prosper Group and goes out daily.
Yeah, so anyone who doesn't receive the AM Rundown, you can sign up at prospergroupcorp.com/AM-rundown. So make sure you do that just to keep updated. Well, many of you know Quentin Marquez, our grassroots strategist here at the Prosper Group. Before joining PG, Quentin had a stint at Axiom Strategies in the RNC. Quentin joined Dan earlier this week to discuss the ongoing digital transformation of campaigns, along with a special guest from RSLC. Here's some of their conversation.
I'm excited to welcome to the podcast a creative and innovative woman who's setting the tone for right-of-center leaders in digital and politics. She hosts the RSLC's It's Bigger Than You Think podcast. Welcome to the Weekend Review, Digital Director of the RSLC, Annie Moore.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the podcast, Danny. Um, we appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. What you and the RSLC accomplished in 2020 was quite impressive. And I'm very intrigued to get your take on the impact digital is having for conservatives at the state level.
So, in your role, I'm sure you get a good sense of how Republican candidates are using digital across the country. When it comes to the state level, where are Republican candidates excelling, and where do you see the greatest opportunities for improvement amongst our bench?
What's really cool and really encouraging to see is how digital is kind of leveling the playing field for state level candidates. So a dollar really goes further in a state level campaign than a national campaign where there's millions of dollars that are pouring in, right? So like even 10, 100, 150, whatever it is, those dollars are buying a lot more things with digital than they would like at a national level. So they're able to get in front of more people for a cheaper price. So they're able to buy ads on Facebook and build their lists and start fundraising and invest in these types of programs and also like turn out the vote. And it's been really cool to see them kind of like step into the 21st century, harness these digital tools that they now have and can afford, because like truly digital it creates access and allows people who aren't raising those millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to play and make a difference. And it's been really encouraging to like watch them do that.
I love what Annie has to say about digital leveling the playing field for state level candidates. A dollar does go further for state level campaigns with digital, and that's what we're seeing and hearing with some of the campaigns we're working with. It's exciting and rewarding to be there helping campaigns get more from their digital ads online.
Yeah, Quentin and I had a great conversation with Annie. We'll share the entire interview with listeners next week. One of the things Annie discusses is how the RSLC invests in digital in spite of many doubters. She shared with us that online donations were up almost 19,000% from Q1 last year to Q1 this year. That's pretty phenomenal, pretty amazing. And those results have to be convincing for any doubters that are out there, and really say a lot about the impact of digital, especially when it comes to fundraising. So I'll give her a quick plug. The RSLC recently started a podcast called It's Bigger Than You Think. Annie's the host of that. You should really check it out. This week's episode had Congresswoman Young Kim. So I would definitely encourage you to check out their podcast and see what that's all about. And on next week's episode of the Week in Review, we'll have the entire conversation with Annie for you to check that out there. So circle back. Caroline, there's so much to share, but we probably should start wrapping things up today. What's the digital action item for the week ahead?
Yes, we always got one of these. It's very important. Last week's was to share Memorial Day plans with supporters. So we hope you all did that and got out there and spread your word about what you're doing. This week, we want to start early and plan ahead for end of quarter. Summer starting, as schools are letting out, 4th of July will be here before we know it. So we really want to encourage you to plan things ahead as things start to pick up. A friend of mine always says a failure to plan is a plan to fail. So plan for success, do that. That's all we got this week, honestly. So special thanks to Quentin Marquez and Annie Moore for joining the show this week. And thank you for listening. Enjoy your holiday weekend and take some time to remember all those who have served our country. You can find our Prosper Group Week in Review podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
If you like the show, please subscribe and share.